Yeah, this is Duke Nukem. Actually, this is Duke Nukem's statue from the limited edition Duke Nukem Forever version that came out on release of the game for consoles. I've recently just picked this up off of Facebook Marketplace because every year or so I get this real urge to go back and play Duke Nukem 3D because it's probably, next to Halo, my absolute favourite first-person shooter. It's fast, it's frantic, everybody should know this game, and if you're watching this you probably do know it to some level. It's an absolute classic, certainly the best sprite art first person shooter game. Doom doesn't hold a candle to it, none of the other games do. Blood, Wolfenstein. Duke is the man, he is the king, even if my dog's not that keen on him. But we're not here to talk about Duke Nukem 3D, that's a classic, everybody knows it. We're here to talk about the game that came out after the final sequel to Duke Nukem 3D came out 12 to 14 years after Duke 3D, and that of course is Duke Nukem Forever. I was probably much like you. In fact, if you look through the internet, pretty much 99.9% of people have a very negative, sour view of this game. But I'm here to say, actually, I was in your camp as well. I thought this game was awful. I played the demo when it came out, or just before the game came out, and I couldn't even get through the short demo because it just left such a poor taste in my mouth. 10 years later, I thought, well, Duke 3D, I've played it a million billion times. Let's try and see what Duke Nukem Forever is actually like. It surely can't be that bad. And now, before everyone starts commenting down in the comments how I'm a stupid idiot, let me just say, I'm not saying this game is perfect. I'm not putting it on a pedestal next to Halo or Battlefield if you're into that game. It's not the best game ever made, but it's certainly not a bad game. At the time it came out, it was getting 2s and 3s, and very sour people were attacking this game. I'm here to say that it's a decent game. It's certainly a 7, 7.5, 8 out of 10 type game. And the video here that I'm going to get into, it is a long one. Certainly for me it's the longest video I've probably ever done, and that's because I really enjoyed the game on the whole. I'm going to be split, I'm going to be balanced. I'm going to give you a chunk of the good stuff, I'm going to give you a chunk of the bad stuff, and then a little surprise at the end as well, which I was pleasantly surprised. It's worth noting that I played this game on the not the most crazy difficulty, the one under that. I think it's Piece of Cake, or is it Come Get Some? I can't remember. But I didn't go for the extreme difficulty, and of course I'm playing this on PC. I probably wouldn't recommend going back and playing this on the 360 or the PS3, but if you've got Steam, it's a couple of quid online if you look through the special stores, and it's certainly worth that. Anyway, let me explain why. Let's get into the bulk of the video, because I just want to show you what other games were out at the time, just before and just after. FPS games. Here's obviously Duke Nukem. We had Greg Hastings Paintball, obviously not a good game. Operation Flashpoint came out just before, also was not a good game. A cash-in from the PC original. Scrolling Down Brink, again, very mediocre, bland, not a good game. Section 8, Halo with jetpacks that just didn't work very well. Portal 2, obviously that's good. Quickly going through, Crisis 2, okay game, not very well remembered now 10 years later. Homefront, a bit of a mess, very mediocre, very dull and repetitive, not a good game. That Halo game was a map pack. Bulletstorm, a decent game, very unique, arcadey, but again, there was just a remake came out very recently that did not go down very well because it was quite mediocre in hindsight. Mindjack there, I think that's actually a third-person game, but either way, it was pretty poor. So those are the games that came out before. After Duke Nukem Forever came out, Fear 3, that was okay, but probably the worst in the trilogy. Sniper Ghost Warrior, a poor game, and Call of Juarez, The Cartel, an awful first-person shooter game, and Deus Ex, that was obviously a really good game, and then finally Body Count, again, a game most people probably haven't even heard of because it was so poor. So that's what you're looking at when you're looking at this time frame and whether or not Duke Nukem should have been panned as hard as it was. Here we go, and what a way to start the game. We're not actually going to run through the whole game. As I told you, I haven't got the footage for the whole game. But this is a hell of an intro, one of the best intros to any game. Usually I just skip these, but this is an awesome way to start the game. Basically an animated retelling of Duke Nukem 3D, and it's done perfectly with this kind of, I don't know, graphic novel style. It's really awesome to see. I just had to include a couple of clips from it. It is fairly long actually, but well worth watching and well worth looking up on YouTube, to be honest with you. So anyway, let's get into the actual game. And what I wanted to start to talk about is the graphics, because as you can see here, they do not look good. Muddy, grainy, blurry, messy, and this is kind of how it came out, how it was released to be really, you know, with all the bells and whistles. What I soon realised was if you go into the options, you can actually make this game look 10 times better. So have a look in the options and the advanced video options there. Pop off the blur, pop off the film grain, and most importantly turn off those special effects, because that is the tone mapping, the weird depth of field, as well as a few other bits, and all of a sudden we've got a very nice, clean, crisp looking game, especially when you consider this is 10 years old. I know it's running a higher resolution than was probably capable at the time, 1440p here, with a very silky smooth frame rate, as you can imagine from modern hardware. But this game just looks awesome. I mean, we're already getting into it, and this is just not too far into the game, but explosions going off everywhere. Alright, you haven't got the freedom of running around in this little cage that you're in, but it's just an awesome visual spectacle with the aliens, with the explosions, with the guns, with the barrels, cars blowing up. It is just a hell of a lot of fun, and that is the key thing about this game, is fun, fun, fun. Now there are times where it does slow down, and there's puzzles that aren't particularly well put into the game in terms of game flow, but gunplay, you can't really go wrong with this, as you can see here. I mean, I can't believe that back in the day, 10 years ago, people were reviewing this and saying that it didn't have substantial gunplay. The gunplay in this, alright, the hit detection is occasionally off a little bit, as you saw there, but it's just a lot of fun with all the guns that you can use. I think there's not a huge array of weapons to use, but I love the way the bodies jib. I love the explosion damage when they fly about. Alright, it's a bit cheesy, but when you're in there playing it, it's quite immersive, to be honest with you. Here's the sniper rifle just popping off heads. You disintegrate body pieces. Sometimes their heads explode and expand. Just a truly fun, frantic gameplay here. And we're only just, you know, into one of the first big battles that you have. And again, we're in a bit of a cage here, but you soon pop out of that and you have to deal with these in a more freedom, open area, which is what most of the gameplay is. You have the tight corridors, you have some small arenas to shoot in, but then the game does open up a little bit, and you have to, again, bear in mind that this is 10 years ago. This was certainly no worse than any other major game that was coming out at the time. This area, which is about halfway through the game, is a very open, long alleyway with lots of buildings to go in, although there's not a huge amount inside the buildings. You know, there's ammo, guns, hideout, little places to heal up, and enemies to find. This is a very open-ended place to fight, and another amazingly fun, frantic gunfight in this game. So again, just puzzled why it got such a negative reception when you consider it. There are some downsides to this game which I think probably pulled it down. Obviously the hype is probably the main one. You know, people waited 12 to 14 years for this game, depending on if you're looking at when Duke 3D came out or when the last Duke Nukem game came out. So, you know, everyone was obviously a huge meme that it would just never come out, even though it kept getting snippets here and there. And then when it did, it isn't a very polished game. It's a hell of a lot of fun, There's some issues other issues that I'll come up to, but you've probably noticed that it is a bit janky in certain areas. Some of the animations are a bit funny in terms of the death. Certainly the NCP animations are really strange. But if you get over that and just have fun with the game, you should know what you're expecting to get with the Duke Nukem game outside of the core gunplay. This is a pretty crazy moment as well. But yeah, it is a bit janky in times, so I can understand why it's not, I'm not saying it's a perfect game, but it is just a lot of fun. There's also these really interesting driving areas. Again, maybe not the most fun because they're a bit long-winded and they are quite frequent through certain parts of the game. But in small chunks, this is actually serviceable. It feels good to drive these cars, and you get a forklift later, and the other like a high-rise scaffolding type thing. They're fun to drive for a short blast, and that is what they should have been used for. Where they're let down a bit is with the pacing. You often have to stop and go get fuel, which is okay because you end up doing some gunfights. But it does feel a little bit repetitive at times. So, again, it's not the best game in the world, but it is a good game. As you can see here, the driving is quite fun, if a little chaotic. Another great part of this game is when you head to Duke Burger, the Duke Nukem themed burger joint that was introduced in Duke 3D. And first up you start, and the enemies are all shrunk down to mini size. It's quite a comical sort of scene to see. They're running around under cups, a la Toy Story 2, or maybe even Toy Story 1 actually. But yeah, so it's a pretty funny scenario that you find yourself in, and eventually you work your way through the opening area, and you get shrunk down, and you end up fighting mini enemies whilst you are Mini Duke, and it's quite a comical scenario, quite unique. I can't imagine any other games doing this sort of thing, fighting in a convenience store, or in this case a kitchen, between condiments, fighting aliens. It's a pretty nice, unique environment to fight in, especially as you are shrunken down. And then that kind of evolves. You move through into the next area, and you end up doing some very brief platforming, or some non-complicated platforming anyway. Again, it's a nice visual to see. It doesn't go on too long. This is actually one of the few moments in the game where it feels like it's well paced. You do a bit of platforming, you survey the environment, you do a bit more platforming, you end up in a little gunfight, and you do a little bit more platforming, and that's kind of how the level rolls here until you get through to the end of the stage. It doesn't take a huge amount of time, and it's not frustrating. That's one of the great things about this game, is the platforming. In most first-person shooters, especially going back 10 to 15 years, they were very clunky when it came to platforming. Here, your jumps feel precise. I don't know how they've managed to pull that off when, like I said, most games back in the day didn't have great platforming sections, but I think the unique environments, the way you move and control, all work within the favours for a bit of platforming. So yeah, again, another good area of the game. So that's a few pointers on why I think this game is good, and without the video going on for too long, I want to just touch on why it did get so many poor reviews and where it did fail, because like I said earlier in the video, it's not perfect. I know I've spoken about a few of the problems with the hype. I'm not going to dwell into that. We all know that it was overhyped, and it was always going to struggle to live up to a 14 or 12 year development cycle. However, it's not as bad as what you would think looking at the reviews. So where else does it fail? Well, it does fail, unfortunately, on the pacing. I did again mention this briefly earlier in the video, but the pacing in the game is not particularly good. There are many areas that kind of drag on just slightly too long. It's not a huge game, as I said in the beginning of the video. You can easily beat this campaign in 8 hours. but there are just too many moments that just drag on a little bit too much, specifically in the beginning of the game. The tutorial, although not called a tutorial, there's just so many sections where you're just running through corridors, and they're trying to build up the atmosphere, and there's lots of little trinkets to go and look at, but it's just a bit too tedious. We want to be gunfighting, we want to be moving around the area that's unique and defined, like I just mentioned in the Duke Burger. Unfortunately, you don't get that at the start of the game, and the first hour is too slow, and people can get that negative vibe from early on in the game, and it's just going to continue through to the rest of the game, and they're going to overlook when things do take an upturn, and it does have these fun moments in the game. It's a real shame, to be honest with you. So also a lot of reviews downplayed the humour within the game, and I have to say that what did you expect from a Duke Nukem game? Whilst I can fully appreciate it's not 1996 and the jokes don't quite hit the same, you have to take it tongue-in-cheek, and you have to look at it on the grand stage of things that Duke is Duke, and they are the liners that he picks up and that he's going to say. If you expected him to come into it with a modern frame of mind, you're just really barking up the wrong tree, and I don't think that should be a criticism of him. There are some areas, specifically with the women in the game, that are a little cringy, not offensive, but just a bit like, ugh, that's just doesn't hold up well any time of year. Even if in 1996, I don't think it would have held up well, just because of the way it was implemented into the game. It's not like Duke 3D. But again, you know what you should be getting with Duke, and this is Duke. So another area that people could criticise, and did actually in a lot of reviews, is the armory that you get. The amount of guns is small, I can't defend that, and there are a couple of guns there that aren't particularly satisfying to use. However, on the bulk of it, there's a good 4 guns in the game which are worth using and are fun and satisfying. As I've shown throughout this video, the gunplay is good. I don't think the gun situation is a criticism of the game. I know when it released you could only hold 2 guns at a time, but they soon patched that out, and now you can hold 4, which is ample, as there are 4 really good guns in the game. There's actually 5 or 6 decent guns in the game, but you can make do with just holding 4 throughout the majority of the game, and I can't have that as a criticism. To me, it's certainly decent for an FPS game of the time. So the only other real downside that I can see whilst playing this is the boss fights, and that kind of links in with the overall point of the game that I have an issue with. So I guess 2 points really. The boss fights are just tedious. They go on too long, they're very basic. It's very much a case of, here's a big bad guy, and let me say, they all do look fantastic, so that is a positive. But here's a bad guy, shoot him with rockets typically, or pipe bombs. Wait for him to shoot at you, you dodge his attack, you keep shooting, you run around looking for ammo, which is just everywhere, and you can constantly top up your ammo, which is basically the problem with the game. If it is going to be a tedious gunfight, at least make ammo a little bit more scarce. Shorten the amount of HP that the enemies have, the bosses have, but make sure that ammo is well balanced, so you just about can get through the fight and survive. With Duke Nukem Forever, it was clearly just unpolished, especially in the boss fights. Just constant unlimited ammo and fight and shooting basically is all you need to do, with a little bit of running around. Whereas if they polished it down, sorted out the health, sorted out the mechanics of the fight, they didn't need to have you with unlimited ammo, which is basically what happens, and is a bit of a shame, a bit of a sour note on the game. But that is, like I said, leads into the ultimate downside of the game. It's just not quite well polished. I know they delayed the game one final time towards the end of development to try and polish it off, and it just doesn't all fit together. It's part of the pacing, part of the unpolished boss fights. You just get that sense throughout the whole game that they just needed to tweak it a little bit more. A lot of the scenes don't quite flow in together. There's one part in particular halfway through the game, or two-thirds of the way through the game, where you get knocked out and all of a sudden you're in a strip club. I was expecting that to lead into the game, but it's just like a dream sequence that's just chucked in there out of the blue with no context afterwards. There's not even any fighting in it. I was quite looking forward to shooting up the enemies in the strip club, but it's just a bit of a knick-knacky area to go and play some minigames. It was really weird to have had that, and it does again ruin the whole game overall because of the pacing. So there you go. You notice that I also haven't mentioned the story as either good or bad, because it's neither. It's serviceable. It's Duke Nukem. Aliens have come. Women are involved. You've got to stop them. There is this weird little side story with the president that's trivial and doesn't really matter, but the story is what the story is, and it is Duke Nukem. You're not here for the story. Anyway, that's the bulk of the video here. I do have one other thing to mention, which was a bit of a surprise, but on the whole, I think campaign, single player Duke Nukem Forever isn't that bad. It's okay. It's certainly still worth playing in 2021, which is a huge surprise, and you know, should be lauded as actually not a bad game. And people need to, we want Duke back. A lot of people do actually, which leads me into the little surprise that I had, and that's the multiplayer. People on Steam PC are still playing Duke Nukem Forever. I think the 10th year anniversary thing has blown this back up, and alright, it's not loads and loads of people. There's a group on Steam with 100 odd people in, and I just went in to record some footage of the multiplayer just to show it in the video, because there's one level in particular that they've ripped out of Duke Nukem 3D, the first level, the Hollywood Holocaust level, and it's in this game as a multiplayer arena, which is really fun. And I went in to video this, and lo and behold, I ended up in a game with 2 other people playing free-for-all. It was really awesome to actually still be able to play this 10 years later. And then I sort of stumbled through in shock, really, that this was a thing that people were still playing. And there's actually tournaments going live, 2v2 tournaments. There's I'm hopefully going to play in the next one, which comes out towards the end of this this month, I think, on the weekend. They're doing votes on it to pick the best day, and like I said, a group of over 100 people. There's still 4 people playing in the game as I film this on a Friday night, which has just blown my mind a little bit. And the multiplayer is fun. There's also a really cool jetpack in there, so that is the one thing that does change from multiplayer to single player. Single player doesn't have any jetpacks. The jetpack is really well implemented into multiplayer, and yeah, it's a really fun multiplayer actually. Another huge positive. A bit janky, a bit laggy in areas, but that's you know, you can expect that from a 10-year-old game that I thought nobody would be playing. Actually, a couple of nights after, I jumped back in just because it was quite a lot of fun, and I found a full lobby of players. Both played Team Deathmatch and Free For All still, and it's absolutely insanely chaotic. So I just thought I'd sneak in a quick clip of that, because it's mad that so many people are still playing this awesome game. So the reason why I wanted to even film the multiplayer, level aside, is there was this really awesome leveling up, well, not leveling up, but this really awesome reward scheme where you have a crib, and in that crib is kind of like you just lobby around and you can kill 10 minutes. But as you level up in multiplayer, you unlock all these little statues, these little art pieces, mini games that shouldn't have been in the main game, or shouldn't have had such a weird shoehorn into the main game. They should have been here in this fashion that they are. It's actually really awesome to see. You unlock women and statues, as I said, and big models, and it's just a really cool way to give you something to work towards whilst playing multiplayer. I obviously hadn't been able to unlock this. I read on Steam that it could have taken up to 20 hours to do in multiplayer, so there's some longevity there. I found a save game that had everything unlocked, so I could just show it off in the video. But again, another huge win. I don't know why other games haven't done this. I know it's all about customizing your own character now and your guns, as opposed to a crib like this. But this is a really good idea that should be implemented into more games moving forward. So that's the video. I know I've rambled on there for quite a long time. I thought this would be a 10-minute video. It's probably more like a half an hour video. But I think we need to stop going on, and it needs to stop being a meme that Duke Nukem Forever was a bad game. It's certainly not the best game in the world, but it's worth playing, as I said, still today, 10 years later. Let's try and get Duke back. I want another Duke game. Imagine if they actually put a proper development cycle of a couple of years into a Duke Nukem game. I don't think the brand should be as hurt as it has been. It's been a long time now since this game came out, and we should get another Duke Nukem game. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on the matter, and I look forward to some comments over time on this video. Thanks very much.